Chapter 602. Seeing the warm smile on the ant's face, Yihua nodded his head, hoping that his son would not do anything foolish. Otherwise, how painful it would be to leave his old mother in this world. Here's your fruit Jianbing, eat it while it's hot. The ant passed the fruit Jianbing to Yihua. Yihua held it in his hand, and feeling the heat coming from it, he let out a breath and walked back to Leisure Bar. While looking at Yihua's back view, the ant revealed a look of gratefulness. What a good person. Is Yihua a good person? Yihua was obviously not a good person. For him to be able to do all these for the auntie, he had already reached the point of being extremely benevolent. If her son continues to persist in going about things the wrong way, Yihua wouldn't continue to dissuade him. It was just a pity for this kind-hearted auntie. While eating a Chinese jianbing, Yihua returned back to Leisure Bar. Just in time, he saw a dog running in the hall, and Blood Demon was holding onto a mop and chasing after the dog ferociously. Looking at the dog, Blood Demon seemed to be itching to make a dog meat hotpot tonight. Yihua was able to discern the dog's breed with a single look, and he was a bit surprised. Why did such a ferocious beast come to this place? Perhaps it was because Yun Lang was running too quickly and was actually running towards Yihua's direction. However, Yun Lang's head was looking towards the blood demon that was at the back. It was as if he was teasing the blood demon. There was a loud bang. Yun Lang's head knocked onto Yihua's calf, and after letting out the unique howl of a husky, Yun Lang fell onto the ground. Yun Lang did not cower and immediately stood up. With a face full of vigilance, he looked at Yihua and let out a low roar, seeming like he was about to make a move. Your Honor, this dog stole food from the kitchen, peed on the table, and even bit on the table. Blood Demon hurriedly pointed out the evidence of the husky's crimes. This only meant one thing: this was a genuine husky. Yihua raised his leg and gave a kick. To actually dare to bare his teeth at me, you sure have guts. Yun Lang let out that unique howl again, but it wasn't a big deal. He stood up and ran upstairs, barking like a dog as he ran, as though he was saying, "Wait for me, I'll go call Big Brother, oh no, Big Sister." Yihua didn't pay attention to it and sat at the bar counter. Blood Demon respectfully poured wine for Yihua. This Chinese jianbing is quite good to pair with wine. Soon, Yun Lang called Big Sister down. Yihua took a look at the dog, then said faintly, "The dog that you brought back. Your Honor, what do you think of this husky? Is it a haw?" Yi Zizi pinched onto Yun Lang's ear and said with a smile. At this moment, Yun Lang felt a little giddy. Just what kind of world is this? Big Sister actually called this man Lord. Could it be that this man is a supreme being? Even if it's a supreme martial artist, silly husky, will not back down. No, even I, Yun Lang, will not cower. It wasn't that Yihua hadn't raised a dog before, but this dog breed seemed to be a bit inferior. Zizi, don't bring everything into the house. Things. He actually called me, Yun Lang, a thing. Big Sister, hurry up and shout. Yi Zizi directly sat on Yihua's embrace and acted coquettishly. Your Honor, aren't I too bored? With a dog, I can also go out for a walk. Wow! Big Sister, how can you do this? Where is your dignity? You are actually acting like a spoiled child in this man's arms. Besides, I'm doing this for everyone's sake. We'll have dog meat to eat during the spring festival. Yi Zizi grinned. The corners of Yun Lang's mouth twitched violently. Was he hallucinating just now? They must be talking about someone else. I, Yun Lang, am a primordial ferocious beast. Do you know what a ferocious beast is? The kind that was very fierce. Super fierce. Sit down. Yi Zizi shouted out towards Yun Lang. Yun Lang sat down without even thinking. Lick my tongue. Yun Lang stuck out his tongue and exhaled loudly. Your Honor, Is this husky very stupid? Yun Lang, Yihua rubbed onto the bridge of his nose, then took a sip of wine. Watch for yourself. Seeing that his honor agreed, Yizizi suddenly kissed onto Yihua's cheek, then sat on Yun Lang's back. Husky, bring me upstairs to play games. Wowi Yun Lang was still very cooperative, and he carried Yizizi upstairs. Yihua shook his head helplessly, then looked at the blood demon who was currently carefully wiping a cup. That focused attitude of his made it seem as if he was doing something big. This blood demon is rather interesting. Not only is he not good at causing harm to the common people, but he is also good at cleaning. Your Honor, are you going to eat lunch here? I will go and prepare. Blood demon placed down the cup in his hand and asked respectfully. It's okay. Yihua still planned to return to Voidless Realm to accompany his wife and child. Right now, I am a man who has to take care of a family. The changes in this year sure are huge. Last year, I was still alone. Yes. Blood Demon replied respectfully. Right now, Feng Tian who was in the crater was looking at the blue sky and white clouds stupidly, and he didn't even notice that Qing Tian had suddenly appeared beside him. Qing Tian murmured, he's been beaten silly. After letting out a light sigh, Qing Tian still brought Feng Tian away, then put on the mask on Feng Tian. After returning to the base, Qing Tian treated Feng Tian's injuries. All of them were just some superficial injuries, so the treatment was much simpler. Wang Debao and Bai Cixin who were standing at the side had grave expressions on their faces. This Feng Tian was actually beaten silly by that little girl to the point that he became autistic. Big brother Qing, this Feng Tian. Wang Debao couldn't help but ask. Qing Tian let out a long sigh, then shook his head. I'm afraid that it will be hard for him to recover. His self-esteem has been completely destroyed. Just how miserable is he? Bai Cixin said lightly. Completely destroyed just like that, is there really such a terrifying thing in the world? Qing Tian smiled faintly. This means that the little girl is very powerful, to be able to beat someone with such a strong self-esteem to such a state. Then, big brother Qing, are you able to win against him? Wang Debao asked probingly. Qing Tian hesitated for a moment, then said, it's hard to say, I will only know after I fight him. Hearing what Qing Tian said, Wang Debao and Bai Cixin both became silent. Right now, Justice and Order Alliance was relying on Qing Tian to keep up appearances. However, right now, even Qing Tian doesn't have the confidence to win against Feng Tian. Don't be so pessimistic, go and order a takeaway first. That roasted pig trotter is not bad, it's very flavorful. Give me two, I will let this Feng Tian think about life. Qing Tian smiled faintly, then walked out of the room. Wang Debao and Bai Cixin took a look at each other. They were a bit confused. When they came downstairs, they saw that Qing Tian was currently leisurely watching TV, seemingly not putting the problem in his heart at all. Bai Cixin sat beside Qing Tian, while Wang Debao was in charge of the outside. Big brother Qing, what should we do about Voidless Realm? Bai Cixin still wanted to ask about the situation clearly. After all, they cannot be careless. Qing Tian was currently watching If You Are the One, and with a smile on the corner of his mouth, he said, just continue to fan the flames, when it's about time, we will attack. Do we have any hope of winning against them? Bai Cixin was very worried. Yizizi's appearance caused Bai Cixin to lose confidence, and furthermore, Feng Tian was also beaten to such a state. Qing Tian placed his chin on his hand and said faintly, no. Chapter 603. Wang Debao went into a daze. Since there aren't any, why are we still going? Isn't that just courting death? Bai Cixin didn't understand and asked, since there aren't any, why are we still going? Do you think there's any difference between killing hundreds of people and hundreds of thousands of people? Qing Tian slowly looked towards Bai Cixin. The latter's heart trembled, and she didn't dare to look straight at Qing Tian's eyes. Wang Debao slapped onto his thigh and cried out, "Big brother Qing. By doing this, you mean?" "That's right. This is what I mean." Qing Tian laughed lightly. "But, what exactly does he mean?" Bai Cixin glared at her husband. "What are you doing here, pretending to know what you don't know?" Wang Debao scratched the back of his head and felt a bit awkward. "I didn't expect that Big Brother Qing wouldn't act according to the norm." "Big Brother Qing, don't hide it anymore, what exactly do you mean?" Bai Cixin asked solemnly. She didn't know what Qing Tian was planning to do. "Since there isn't any chance of winning, why are we still going?" Qing Tian took out a piece of tissue, wiped the back of his hand, then said indifferently, "If Voidless Realm really massacred hundreds of thousands of people, what difference do you think there is between that and hundreds of people?" Bai Cixin and Wang Debao opened their mouths wide. At this moment, they finally understood what Qing Tian meant. Courting death. Sending these people to die as cannon fodder. This method is simply infuriating. Qing Tian continued, "If we don't use our lives to attract hatred, what should we use to attract hatred?" The husband and wife's entire body went numb from Qing Tian's words. That relaxed look on their face made it seem as if they were playing a game, and they didn't put human lives in their eyes at all. Ordinary people are unable to bring down Voidless Realm, only some old monsters can be lured out. However, these old monsters will not come out unless they have no other choice. You two should understand what I mean, right? Qing Tian yawned. A plan has to be done step by step, it can't be too fast, after all, haste makes waste. Old monsters? Wang Debao asked confusedly. Qing Tian folded the tissue in his hand and placed it at the side. This Feng Tian is also an old monster, it's just that his strength is relatively weaker. These people hide in the crowd and don't care about the secular world. As long as nothing big happens, they won't make a move. Oh right, I am also one of these old monsters. Wang Debao and Bai Cixin were shocked. This was the first time they had heard of an old monster, and Qing Tiandi was one of them. Just how many unknowns are there in this world? Alright, take your time to digest this news. Don't forget to spread hatred. Qing Tian reminded them and then continued to watch the TV with a look that said, "Don't disturb me anymore." Wang Debao and Bai Cixin were also very tactful and did not continue to ask. The father and son walked to the garden outside the house and chatted softly. "Wife, Wang Debao said worriedly. Bai Cixin knew what her husband wanted to say, so she said in a sweet voice, "I know, don't worry." Although revenge was important, it was also necessary to be alive. From Qing Tian's performance, it seemed that there was no trust in him. He had to leave a way out for himself. Even if they were exposed, at least they would have a chance to live. At this moment, Lord Jiu was not in a hurry to return to Longan City. Instead, he was walking on the streets, holding the 8848 titanium phone in his hand. This was because another master had sent a message saying that he wanted to meet him, and Lord Jiu was currently on the way there. Speaking of old monsters, Lord Jiu had many masters like this. Standing outside of a Starbucks, Lord Jiu was a bit surprised. Meeting here? Isn't this too rash? However, these masters all have their own eccentricities, and I am already used to it. Walking into the Starbucks, there were a few youngsters sitting inside, and there were also a few waiters. Lord Jiu observed these youngsters and felt that something was wrong. Did I go to the wrong place? There's no mistake, this is the right place. Mister, do you need anything? A waiter asked with a smile. Lord Jiu let out a breath. Perhaps the master hasn't arrived yet. Give me a cup of latte. Lord Jiu said faintly. All right, please wait a moment. Lord Jiu chose a seat and quietly waited. From time to time, he would take out his phone and look at it. Master couldn't have forgotten about it, right? Your coffee. The waiter served the coffee and said with a smile. Lord Joe nodded his head, then took a sip of the coffee and wrinkled his brows. As expected, I am still not suitable to drink coffee. Seeing that Lord Joe didn't say anything, the waiter returned to his position. Time passed by, and Lord Joe was about to fall asleep. Leave. That was impossible. His master had asked him to come, but he had left. Wasn't that the same as dying? The reason why I, Lord Joe, am able to get to where I am today is because I have an extremely strong sense of smell. Master must be testing my patience. Maybe he's using binoculars to peek. Master was so mischievous. As the curtain of night descended, the master had yet to arrive, and Joey had already fallen asleep. He had already refilled countless cups of coffee, yet he was still able to fall asleep. After an unknown amount of time, Lord Joe heard a young lady's voice, "Sir, we're off work." Joey slowly opened his eyes, took a puzzled look, then looked at his watch. It is already so late, seems like Master has already forgotten about me. Sigh. Lord Joe stood up and walked out of Starbucks. It was still a little cold in Harbor City late at night. Lord Joe straightened his collar and called for a taxi. Sorry to keep you waiting. Lord Joe's eyes suddenly froze. Could the voice behind him be his master? Slowly turning his head, the corner of Lord Joe's mouth twitched. Isn't that the waiter from the beginning? Shit! Lord Joe swallowed his saliva and sized him up carefully. Ordinary long sleeves, jeans, a broken car. A bicycle, and looking at the age of the waiter, he seems to only be in his early 20s. This is my master. Who are you trying to bluff? Don't be deceived by my appearance. Joey was still a bit nervous as he asked while trembling with fear, Master, how should I address you? Just call me Chewing. Chewing. To actually have such a feminine name, Master. Weren't you too hasty when you chose the name? Joey only dared to think about it in his heart, and even more so did not dare to call out his master's name. Master, I wonder why you called me over. Joey lowered his head and asked. Chewing propped up the bicycle, then took out a can of refine from the plastic bag. Do you want a drink? Thank you, Master. Joey received the can with both of his hands, and Chewing opened a can of refine. Joey reminded, Master, it is not safe to drive after drinking. Chewing, who was raising her head, went into a daze for a moment, then took a look at her bicycle and said with a smile, Indeed, it is not safe to drive after drinking. Joey smiled, then opened the can of refine that was in his hands and discovered that the taste was not bad. Chapter 604. Chewing put the Rio back into the plastic bag and got on her bike. I didn't ask you to come today, so go do your work. Ah. Then, Master, the matter about dealing with Voidless Realm that you mentioned? Joey shouted out hurriedly. Right now, I don't have any confidence in my heart. Just a little girl from Voidless Realm is enough to intimidate everyone. Chewing waved her hand as she rode her bicycle. Do as you see fit. Looking at his master disappearing on the street, Joey was a bit stupefied. This master is the one that has the least pretentious amongst all of the masters, and he actually let me handle such a big matter. A Maybach stopped beside Lord Joe, and a Moon-class elite quickly got off and opened the door for Lord Joe. Lord Joe thought to himself that his masters were all low-key, and he was sitting in such a luxurious car. Wasn't it a bit too much? It shouldn't be too much. One should know how to enjoy life. This master is actually working at Starbucks. This is really blinding my eyes. Meanwhile, inside Voidless Realm, Yi Hua and his two wives were preparing to sleep. Although all of them wanted to sleep together, Yi Hua didn't force them. If he really wanted to force them, it wouldn't be a problem for him to do so. However, the feeling of doing so wouldn't be too good. He had to make them be willing to do so first. Hugging onto the most beautiful and sexiest woman in the world, Yihua felt very good in his heart. Although he couldn't use his gun for real, it was still possible for him to have some fun. Qinya and Donghuang Baiji also wouldn't say anything about it. You have to be prepared. The Righteous Alliance and the Peace Association will not let this matter rest. The two wives who were sleeping at the side remained silent, and their faces were completely red. It seems like the feeling is starting to come. I am asking you guys a question, why aren't you guys talking? Yihua asked puzzledly, then turned his head around to take a look. These two women obviously wanted to die, but they were still stubbornly holding on. What was the point? They were already an old couple, yet she was still shy. Is it comfortable? Yihua couldn't help but tease. Qinya and Donghuang Baiji felt very gloomy. The only thing they could do was to hold on to their husband's hand tightly and not let him act recklessly. Donghuang Baiji hurriedly changed the topic. If they were to really come this time, we wouldn't let them go either. Qinya, who was at the side, nodded her head. They have already killed their way to our doorstep, could it be that we still have to endure silently? Yihua was very satisfied with the wives' attitude. It seems like the soft-heartedness in their hearts have already disappeared. All right. This time, we will show the world. If he dares to come to Voidless Realm, then he will not be able to return. Yihua shouted out lightly, and his eyes shone with bloodthirst. Since this is your choice, then I shall grant you death. Another month passed by very quickly. It was almost May Day, but the entire world seemed to have adapted to the new environment. There were more and more cultivators, while the Righteous Alliance and the Peace Association swelled day and night. Furthermore, an attack was also quietly breaking out. The two great powers had already decided to attack Voidless Realm. This was a piece of exciting news. If several 100,000 people were to attack Voidless Realm, they would definitely be able to flatten the entire Voidless Realm. Just thinking about it makes me feel great. I heard that there are a lot of treasures in Voidless Realm, and when the time comes, I will definitely be able to snatch a lot of treasures. In short, exterminating Voidless Realm would bring a lot of benefits. This was also a magnificent feat of exterminating a demon, and this was also a great act of enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Everyone was getting restless, and they couldn't wait to kill everyone in Voidless Realm, plunder everything, and burn everything down. Within Wang Debao's villa, Qing Tiandi was the same as usual. He was currently watching television, and in front of him was a bowl of braised beef instant noodles. The entire house was filled with the smell of instant noodles. Wang Debao and Bai Cixin were the same as well. They were very busy recently, and they had to make arrangements for all kinds of people. Suddenly, a sound rang out from the stairs. The three looked towards the stairs, and Feng Tian could be seen walking down. This was the first time he came down this month. Feng Tian could be seen to be completely dispirited, his face was filled with stubble, and his hair was not tidied up either. He was beaten up to the point where he could no longer take care of himself. Feng Tian slowly sat down and said in a low voice, "I'm hungry, everyone." Wang Debao hurriedly went to prepare instant noodles, then gave them to Feng Tian. Feng Tian picked up the bowl of instant noodles and said, "Give me another bowl." Feng Tian finished eating bowl after bowl of instant noodles. It was truly an endless cycle. After finishing eating, Feng Tian let out a sigh, then stood up and paused for a moment, then walked back upstairs. Everyone could still hear the sound of the bedroom door closing. Did he recover? Or is he still autistic? Qing Tiandi laughed, then drank a mouthful of soup. This is so fragrant. How are the preparations on your side? Qing Tiandi asked curiously. Bai Cixin's table manners were rather elegant. To be able to eat instant noodles to such an extent, she must be a woman with some skills. Everything has been arranged. 1 week later, we will attack together with the people from the Peace Association. Bai Cixin said as she took out a tissue and wiped her mouth. Qing Tiandi laughed softly. Very good, you two also pay attention to your safety. Chapter 605. The mother and son enjoyed a different time. The auntie's eyes were filled with love, and the smile on her face was so gentle. After quite a while, Wooly held on to his stomach. I'm bloated to death. Silly child, don't overeat. The auntie laughed and scolded. He was already an adult, but he was still acting like a child. Mom, your cooking is too delicious. Wooly wiped his mouth and chuckled. The auntie smiled gently and said, Mom will cook for you every day from now on. You have to come home often. Wooly seemed to be affected as well. For the first time, he didn't object and even nodded. Standing up, Wooly grabbed his luggage and walked to the door. The middle-aged woman followed behind him, reluctant to part. Wooly changed his shoes and opened the door. Ollie, be careful. Mom will be waiting for you at home, the auntie shouted worriedly. She felt a heavy feeling in her heart. Wooly turned around and smiled. Mom, I know. The woman nodded and watched her son walk out of the house. Wooly, who was dragging his suitcase, paused for a moment. The middle-aged woman looked at her son, who was standing still, and was also puzzled. Did you forget anything else? Wooly turned his head around and looked towards his mother, and discovered that his mother's sideburns had already turned white, and the wrinkles on her face had also increased. Wooly walked back and hugged his mother. Mom, thank you. If the aunt remembered correctly, this was the first time her son had hugged her like this. Tears instantly flowed from the corners of her eyes. Good boy. After hugging his mother tightly, Wooly walked out of the house without hesitation and closed the door. And just like that, the aunt watched as her son's figure disappeared before her eyes. She first stretched out her hand to grab onto him, but then put down her hand. In Voidless Realm, Donghuang Baiji had already received the news. In just 1 week, several 100,000 people would gather together and attack Voidless Realm. This news still caused the Empress to be dazed for quite a while. They really came. Yihua, are we really going to do this? Donghuang Baiji seemed to be a bit unable to bear to do this. After all, those are the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. Last time, he had only killed a few hundred, but this time, it was not this number. How many families would be destroyed? Yihua didn't have as many concerns as Donghuang Baiji. The enemies had already killed their way to the entrance, so how could he possibly welcome them respectfully? Indeed, they had to welcome him respectfully, and they had to welcome him respectfully with a butcher's knife. Right now, Qingye was much calmer than before. This sort of calmness was the same as Yihua's calmness. It seemed like Qingye didn't have any pity in her heart. Baiji, you are the mistress of Voidless Realm, and there are thousands of people who are depending on you. Could it be that you are planning to surrender? Yihua asked in a low voice. The battle is right around the corner, and to actually say such stupid words. If I were to say this in front of those subordinates of mine, how low would the morale of my subordinates be? Donghuang Baiji hurriedly shook her head. Of course I won't surrender. Yihua said coldly, seems like the incident back then didn't teach them a lesson at all. Do they really think that just by having more people, they will be able to solve the problem? Dream on. Qingye tacitly agreed with her husband's words. If more people can solve the problem, then what is the point of having strong people? A mouthful of saliva from each of them was enough to drown an expert. Yihua, don't you think that this matter is a conspiracy? In actuality, Donghuang Baiji was also thinking about this problem. If I were to fall into someone else's scheme, I would appear to be very foolish. This time, Qingye agreed with Donghuang Baiji and said lightly, and, on that night, there wasn't a single person left alive. Hold up the world. Yihua said faintly. Qinya and Donghuang Baiji went into a slight daze. It's him. Yihua nodded his head, then took out a stick of cigarette and lit it up. It's very likely that it's him. He sure is an opponent with brains. Then, Yihua, why didn't you just kill him? Donghuang Baiji asked curiously. Yihua went into a daze. If I kill him, what am I going to do? It wasn't easy for me to meet a worthy opponent. Of course, I can't say such words out loud. If I say it out loud, they will definitely force me to kill him. I couldn't find him, so I asked Brett to retreat. Yihua revealed a helpless look. After hearing that, Donghuang Baiji shook her head and said coquettishly, at such a crucial moment, you, Qinya laughed lightly and did not say anything. Alright, right now, everyone is looking at you, Donghuang Baiji's decision. Don't throw my face away. Yihua said gravely, then stood up and walked out of the room. In the past, I have always been worried about Qinya. Now that Qinya is fine, Donghuang Baiji has become indecisive again. Hearing what Yihua said, Donghuang Baiji pouted her mouth. I feel a bit wronged. How would I dare to throw your face away? Qinya picked up the teacup and took a small sip. Baiji, don't you know that we are men? We want our face even if we die. I know, but I don't feel like I have lost my face. You make it sound like I have already lost my face. The Empress felt very wronged. I am even thinking of ways to help you gain face. Qinya walked to Donghuang Baiji's side and patted on Donghuang Baiji's shoulder. Yihua's temper is a bit big sometimes, and his words are also very straightforward. Don't take it to heart. I know, this fellow only knows how to bully us, and he even said that I have lost his face. Donghuang Baiji hugged onto Qinya and said. Alright, Yihua's words have indeed hurt Donghuang Baiji a bit. As a wife, losing her husband's face is a very serious matter, and what Yihua said just now caused Donghuang Baiji to feel very gloomy. Qinya smiled helplessly, then stroked Donghuang Baiji's hair. Alright, I will help you teach him a lesson. You have to teach him a lesson in front of me then. Alright, why have you become like Yen? Donghuang Baiji pinched onto Qinya petulantly. As a sister, you have to comfort my broken heart. Alright, Anfu. Then, next time when I am bullied, you have to do the same too. Qinya smiled tenderly. Sure. Fortunately, the two little fellows were not here. Otherwise, when they saw the two mothers like this, their jaws would have dropped to the ground. Did their mothers have such an operation? He had learned something new. The two women comforted each other in the room, and Yihua went to leisure bar. As for what he was going to do, of course, it was to hold another mobilization meeting. He called all of his subordinates over for a meeting. This time, even Air Ha and Floating Battle were present. Regarding the matter regarding Do Fusher, Yihua was the one who agreed to Do Fusher. As long as Do Fusher was able to deal with absolute heaven and Brett, Yihua would accept Do Fusher. Although the process was a little fierce, at least it was completed. As an honorable supreme, he couldn't go back on his words, right? I hate deceiving people the most. As for that Yun Lang, he had now become Yi Zizi's little brother. Wouldn't a subordinate's little brother be his own little brother's little brother? There was nothing he could do. This was Do Fusher's first time participating in a meeting, so he was a little reserved. Of course, he was also very shocked. His mind was in a daze the entire time. So it turns out that there is someone above my big brother. There is someone above my big brother's big brother. Oh my God. How is this possible? Furthermore, I feel that I am very weak. I am standing at the very back of the line. Furthermore, there are so many beauties, so many handsome guys. My appearance is gone in an instant. I am so sad. I really want to cry. However, at the same time that he was shocked, Floating Battle was also very excited. So strong. This is a gathering of powerful individuals. Chapter 606. Yun Lang, who was squatting beside Yi Zizi, also had the same feeling. He couldn't even sense the aura of these people. How powerful were they? They were so frightening that this husky wanted to whimper. However, being able to follow these powerful people made Yun Lang feel very good. His silvery white tail kept wagging, making him look more and more like a husky. Subordinate. We pay our respects to his honor. Everyone shouted out in unison. Their imposing manner was extraordinary, as if they were going to go to war. What is called imposing manner? This is called imposing manner. Toward someone like Dong Huang Baiji, it would only lower her imposing manner. Yi Hua raised his hand, and everyone was pulled up by a formless power. Do Fusher, who was standing at the back, was so excited that he started sweating. As expected, I have followed the right person. If I follow his honor, I will be able to eat and drink well, and furthermore, I won't be bullied by anyone. To think that I, Do Fusher, would be able to have such a day. Cool, cool, cool. Yi Hua first lit up a stick of cigarette, then said gravely, 1 week later, there will be a small-scale battle. That's right. In Yi Hua's opinion, this kind of battle with several 100,000 people was only a small-scale battle, and the battle with Heaven's Mansion could only be counted as a medium-scale battle. True large-scale battles were still very rare. Subordinate is willing to sweep away all obstacles for your honor. Wei Chang was the first one to shout out loudly and kneel on the ground. Following Wei Chang's shout, everyone shouted out in unison, subordinates are willing to go through water and tread on fire for his honor. Yi Hua was very satisfied with his subordinate's attitude and said, the purpose of this meeting is not to discuss about this battle, but rather, it is to discuss about the outcome of the battle. Brett cupped his hands and said, Your Honor, subordinate believes that any kind of conspiracy is nothing but a paper tiger in your honor's eyes. Brett's words were pleasing to the main body's ears. Brett is right. I am naturally not afraid of those conspiracies. After receiving his honor's praise, Brett felt a bit more comfortable in his heart. I wonder if Zhu Tian has woken up yet. Yi Hua paused for a moment, then continued, however, I do not wish to use my strength to suppress the other party. If I were to do so, it would seem like I am bullying the other party. Everyone went into a daze for a moment, and soon after, they shouted out in unison, Your honor is benevolent. Floating Battle wasn't used to this kind of rhythm. So this was benevolence. It seemed like he had to redefine benevolence. So, after this small-scale battle, no one knows what will happen. This sovereign is looking forward to it. Right after Yi Hua finished speaking, the subordinates shouted out once more, to be able to relieve his honor's tiredness, that is a supreme honor. As expected of a group of subordinates who were good at bootlicking. Their words were really crafty. Actually, it wasn't all bootlicking. For the people of the 7 deadly sins, this was a very normal thing. For example, Zi Shan, Green and Red brothers. They had never come into contact with Zi Shan in the past, so they mistook Zi Shan's actions as bootlicking. Although this is only a small-scale battle, it is considered a large-scale battle here. I want to go all out this time to shock the enemy. As soon as they heard that everyone was going to move out, everyone was moved. There was a bloodthirst in their bones. The number of times that his honor requested for the entire army to move out wasn't a lot. The first time was adding family, and the second time seemed to be against a deity. This might very well be the third time. However, compared to the second time that his honor requested for the entire army to move out, this time's army is quite a bit inferior. However, at the very least, being able to follow his honor and set out together with him made everyone very excited. Subordinates will obey his honor's command. Everyone shouted out, and their shouts nearly overturned the roof. The reason why I gathered all of you here is to let you all think about how to line up, how to tell that we are an unstoppable team. Even Yihua himself didn't know what to do. I don't want to use those pretentious methods that I used in the past anymore. I want to change my pretentious methods. However, this question stumped everyone, because this question was very serious. Since his honor's request was so high, an ordinary plan definitely wouldn't be able to satisfy his honor's request. Furthermore, judging from the pretentious method that his honor used in Heaven's mansion last time, this time's pretentious method definitely wouldn't be inferior to that time either. Looking at his subordinates remaining silent, Yihua asked gravely, "What is it? Do none of you have any good ideas? Do you all have to let me think of ideas every single time? If that is the case, what is the point of having you all?" Everyone turned pale with fright and hurriedly knelt down. Subordinates deserve to die. Subordinates are slow-witted. Get up after you have thought it through. Yihua said coldly. Other than knowing how to fight, what else do you know? I am just like taking care of a child. Everyone remained silent. His honor's temper is a bit big. How could Yihua's temper not be big? Hugging the most beautiful woman in the world every single day, yet being unable to move, this kind of feeling is very sullen. Whoever hugs me will know. None of Yihua's subordinates answered, because even if they answered, his honor wouldn't be satisfied. Therefore, remaining silent was the best choice. At most, I will just get scolded by his honor. Furthermore, with so many people scolding me at the same time, it wouldn't be too shameful. Your honor, about that. I know. Do Fusher, who was kneeling at the back, suddenly raised his hand and said. Yihua signaled Do Fusher to speak. Everyone shook their heads. Young man, you are truly too young, you don't understand his honor at all. Do Fusher was still a bit nervous, and he said while trembling with fear, his honor is able to pull out a small stool and sit in front of the army. What kind of aura would that be? When subordinate imagines that scene, I can't help but have the urge to worship his honor. After hearing that, everyone shook their heads. Small stool. Isn't this too degrading? During the last battle of Heaven Court, his honor stepped on Inferno Abyssal Dragon, and this time, his honor is actually able to sit on a small stool. Young man, you really don't understand anything. However, after hearing that, Yihua sunk into deep thought. Small stool. Yihua couldn't help but imagine that kind of scene in his mind. I, the Supreme Overlord, am sitting in front of the army, on the most ordinary small stool, with a cigarette in my mouth, and a pair of eyes coldly staring at the army. Seems like this kind of scene isn't bad. In the past, I was already used to being high profile, so this time, getting a small stool is not bad either. Good. Well said. Yihua couldn't help but shout out. All of Yihua's subordinates had stupefied looks on their faces. They completely don't know what's good about this scene. Hearing his honor's praise, Do Fusher hurriedly kneeled down and kowtowed to thank his honor. Being able to help his honor solve his problems is our duty as subordinates. All of Yihua's subordinates were furious. To actually let a newcomer steal their limelight. Motherfucker. Yun Lang rubbed his paw. In actuality, I wanted to say the same thing just now, just that, I wasn't able to speak like a human, that's all. I was afraid that his honor wouldn't be able to understand me, so I decided to keep my opinion to myself. Sigh, this husky is rather smart. Yihua swept his gaze across all of Yihua's subordinates. Look at this Do Fusher. It's only his first time attending a meeting, and he already knows so much. All of you still have to work hard and learn from him. All of Yihua's subordinates were a bit envious of Do Fusher. His honor has never praised anyone like this before, and furthermore, he even said that he wants everyone to learn from him. Right now, Do Fusher was a bit giddy. These big shots are going to learn from me. I'm so excited. Humph! Donghuang Baiji snorted and dodged away. From her tone and actions, it seemed that she had gotten a little better. Baiji, for a woman like you to go and fight anywhere, it would mean that you are giving me face. Yihua once again stretched out his hand and stroked onto the Empress's cherry lips. The Empress's cherry lips were very soft. Dong Huang Baiji's originally angry face immediately collapsed. Then, why did you say that I made you lose face? Dong Huang Baiji used her small fists and pounded onto her chest. Yihua said gravely, Baiji, you must be decisive when killing, hesitation isn't like your style. Dong Huang Baiji silently nodded her head. Look at your frowning face, you don't look like an empress at all. Isn't this all because I was angered by you? It's all your fault, alright, blame me, blame me. Since her husband had already given in, Dong Huang Baiji was no longer angry and snuggled into her husband's embrace. Yihua said lightly, I have already arranged everything for this matter, I will deal with it myself, so that you won't feel bad about it again. I can do it. Yihua's gaze became focused as he shouted out lightly, all right then. This time, all of us will move out and let everyone experience what I'm capable of. Who dared to provoke my woman? How did they end up? Hearing her husband's bold words, Dong Huang Baiji felt as if she had eaten honey. I found a good man, this is great, that's why. Yihua's change is still very big. In the past, he would often scold people and coax his wife, but now, look at how good he is at coaxing his wife. A few minutes ago, Dong Huang Baiji was still panting with anger, but a few minutes later, tsk. Look at her expression, it seems like she wants to roll on the bed with me, but I won't allow her to do so. If I allow you to scram just because you want to scram, where would my dignity be? Dong Huang Baiji, who was in bliss, said tenderly, hubby, I love you. Chapter 608. Time passed by, and very quickly, a week passed by. Today was April 28th, the weather was clear, and it was also the day when the Peace Association and Justice Alliance launched their attack. Both sides sent out 150,000 people, and for a total of 300,000 people. Furthermore, they even gave themselves a temporary name, Sky Law. As the name implied, they were here to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Such a scale was unprecedented, and everyone was excited, looking forward to the moment when they trampled on Voidless Realm. Meanwhile, inside Voidless Realm, Yihua's underlings all appeared, and even the blood demon who was cleaning the place was present. Of course, Do Fusher was also present. The bruise on his face had yet to disappear, and he stood at the back, not daring to speak anymore. Just now, Yihua also asked Do Fusher curiously, what happened to his face? How could Do Fusher dare to answer truthfully, and thus said that he fell down? This caused Yihua to laugh lightly. To be able to fall to such a state, Do Fusher is indeed a talent. After Qingye and Dong Huang Baiji greeted Yihua and his underlings, they didn't say anything. It will be fine if they just stand beside their husband later. Dong Huangli and Yi Yan were also standing at the side. The two little fellows were also meticulously dressed up by their mother today, so they mustn't lose face. The two little fellows were already impatient to go on stage, and they looked up at their father's broad back view. Yi Yan was even thinking in his heart, I must definitely become a man like my father in the future. Wait for my order. Yihua shouted out while holding onto a bamboo stool. Yes. Everyone shouted out gravely. After finished speaking, Yihua passed through the barrier with the bamboo stool. Meanwhile, Voidless Realm didn't have any signs of preparing for war, and everyone was still living their lives as usual. Of course, such a big matter still has to be paid attention to. After all, today is the glory that belongs to Voidless Realm. Yihua walked out of the barrier and arrived at the desert outside. He placed the bamboo stool on the ground, then sat down, took out a cigarette, and lit it up. Interesting, I have never been so low-key before. It seems like it is quite interesting to be low-key once in a while. Right now, I am just waiting for those people to come over. Meanwhile, at the border of the desert, a large army of 300,000 people had already gathered. The ones leading the army were naturally the two leaders, Bai Cixin and Zhou Yi. In actuality, the two of them knew that those people were here to die, but they still couldn't bear to do so. "Ninth Lord, it's getting late," Bai Cixin said in a sweet voice. Zhou Yi nodded his head. "This land of yellow sand is currently a forbidden area, and I heard that Voidless Realm is located at the center of the land of yellow sand. We have to cross this land of yellow sand first." There was no other way, the formation was too densely packed. Luckily, there were quite a lot of ancient godly items on both sides, and after the death of more than 10,000 people, they finally killed these dozens of huge scorpions. The huge scorpions' bodies were full of treasures, and their hard outer shell could be used as armor, and their incomparably hard scorpion tail could be used as a top-notch spiritual tool. Although more than 10,000 people died, it still couldn't stop the chaos. The dozens of huge scorpions were all stripped clean, and everyone obtained their first harvest, and they seemed very excited. It was indeed the right choice to form a group and come to this desert, even if more than 10,000 people died in the battle just now. Bai Cixin ordered the team to recuperate, increase their vigilance, and continue their journey in 10 minutes. Right now, Wu Li was already injured, and a deep cut was made on his left arm. Fortunately, he had prepared healing medicine, and with the help of magic, he felt much better. However, he, the team leader, no longer had anyone to give orders to. Just now, that huge scorpion appeared at his side, and other than himself, the other 100 people in the team were all killed. This caused Wu Li's heart to sink. "I haven't even seen what Voidless Realm looks like, and more than 10,000 people have already died. And this is merely the first wave." A man could be seen handing out a pen and paper, and everyone was stupefied as they held onto the pen and paper. "What are you doing?" Wu Li asked. The man saw that Wu Li's armband was that of a team leader, and thus, he said very respectfully, "Team leader, this is used to write a will." After finished speaking, the man continued handing out the pen and paper. In actuality, this was also what Bai Cixin wanted. Even if they were to die, they should at least send a will to their family. Wu Li's hand that was covered in blood tightly held onto the white paper, and his hand was trembling a bit. Looking at the people around him, the excitement he had just a moment ago was no longer there. The 10,000 people who died didn't even have the time to write a will. Although they obtained some treasures, the price they paid was too tragic. Wu Li took a deep breath. "It's impossible for me to become a deserter." Picking up the pen, Wu Li began writing on the white paper. Chapter 609. Wu Li wrote down all of the words that he wanted to say, his longing and shame towards his mother. "If there is a next life, I will definitely accompany you by your side." 5 minutes later, the man began to collect the corpses again. However, there were a lot of people who expressed their disdain. "How can I possibly die? What a joke." Wu Li passed his will to the man and said gravely, "I'll be counting on you." The man nodded his head gravely. 10 minutes passed by very quickly, and the huge group began moving forward once again. Due to the lesson that they received just now, they spread out a lot and were not as concentrated as before. However, not even tens of minutes later, a whirlpool suddenly appeared and instantly devoured over 1,000 people. A lot of people were sucked into the whirlpool, and miserable screams could be heard. Those who could fly all flew high up into the sky and looked at the messy group below them. Spread out. Spread out. Facing such a whirlpool, there seemed to be nothing they could do. A huge centipede could be seen rushing out from the bottom of the sand. Those densely packed legs made everyone's body shiver, and its long tentacles seemed to be carrying along a strange spiritual energy fluctuation. What the heck? Is this God of Touch? Big brother, what is God of Touch? Have you played Legend of Touch before? You don't even know what God of Touch is. Ah. I have never played it before. Boom, 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 waves of spiritual energy fluctuation could be seen coming out from the surroundings once again. Another two huge whirlpools could be seen appearing and immediately devouring countless people's lives. Two centipedes that brought along a terrifying aura burst out from the ground. Furthermore, tens of giant scorpions also appeared at the same time. Everyone subconsciously swallowed their saliva. This is going to be a tough battle. Bai Cixin and Zhou Yi, who were in the sky, tightly wrinkled their brows. This time, we are bringing people to fight against Voidless Realm. And not to fight against these mutated animals. However, if we don't kill these animals, how are we going to reach Voidless Realm's entrance? These monsters seem to be Voidless Realm's guardians, obstructing our path. Fight! Bai Cixin shouted out, and a terrifying pressure flashed across the ancient godly item in her hand as her delicate body charged towards the ground. Zhou Yi let out a breath, then condensed a hammer in his hand. When the hammer appeared, the entire sky darkened for a moment as lightning struck down. Thick lightning gathered on Zhou Yi's hammer, and Zhou Yi's entire body was like a god of lightning as he shouted out loudly. The hammer immediately released a dazzling light, and the huge lightning seemed to be able to penetrate everything in the world. The lightning struck the centipede's body. One could see with the naked eye that the electricity on the centipede's body was destroying it. In an instant, the centipede lost its life and collapsed. Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned for a moment before bursts of cheers erupted. As expected of the president of the Peace Association, he was able to kill a centipede in one hit. The morale of the entire team was greatly boosted by Lord Zhou's attack. They attacked without any regard for their lives. Lord Zhou could only use this move once. It would be great if he could use it infinitely. Everyone joined the chaotic battle. The remaining two centipedes were very tenacious. With every strike, hundreds of people would die. There was also the threat of the giant scorpion beside them. The casualties were disastrous. After an hour of hard work, they finally defeated these mutated animals. However, the losses had increased from 10,000 to 100,000. In just an hour, a total of 100,000 people were lying in the yellow sand. Furthermore, they didn't even get to see what Voidless Realm looked like. But now, Bai Cixin, Wang Debao, and Lord Zhou were all wounded. This place was really too scary. They were basically here to die. The problem was, these heads were not given to Voidless Realm. They were given to these mutated animals. Right now, Wooly was lying on a pile of sand, and blood was flowing out from his mouth non-stop. Because he was a squad leader, there were paramedics beside him. However, right now, both of Wooly's legs were already gone. The paramedics inspected Wooly's legs, then shook their heads. There was nothing they could do, Wooly's injuries were too heavy. Just as the paramedics were preparing to leave and save the others, Wooly stretched out his hand and grabbed onto one of the paramedics, then said with all of his strength, "Please, tell my mother that I have let her down." Wooly looked at the paramedics. The paramedics tightly wrinkled his brows and nodded his head heavily. Seeing that the paramedics nodded their head, Wooly seemed to have lost all of his strength. The hand that was grabbing onto the paramedics fell down as well. Wooly looked towards the sky, and in the sky, his mother's warm smile could be seen. The corner of Wooly's mouth slightly rose, and he seemed to have returned back to his mother's embrace. The paramedics let out a breath, then stretched out his hand and wiped Wooly's eyes. However, countless corpses were already lying all around, and the yellow sand had already become a sea of blood. Extremely terrifying. When Lord Zhou and Bai Cixin saw this scene, their hearts felt very heavy. They came here with a mission. If they didn't complete it, Wang Debao held onto the blood-stained longsword tightly and muttered, 110,000. Gone just like that. Lord Zhou and Bai Cixin became silent. All of this was just to frame Voidless Realm. Looking at the entire yellow sand, skeletons were everywhere, and the sight was too horrible to look at. Bai Cixin thought inwardly, is all of this really worth it? Just to frame voidless realm with a groundless crime. The remaining 190,000 people were currently collecting the spoils of war. That giant centipede's entire body was filled with treasures. However, there were still some people who were flipping over the corpses, seemingly looking for their brothers or other people. There were even some people who were hugging onto the corpses and wailing loudly. Bai Cixin looked towards the endless yellow sand. Where exactly is this voidless realm? Why can't I see it yet? However, right now, Yi Hua was still waiting. He was currently smoking cigarette after cigarette, and the ground was filled with cigarette butts. Why is he still not here yet? Is he still coming or not? I have already waited for more than an hour, and not even a single strand of hair can be seen. However, there is a layer of cigarette butts on the ground. I feel a bit awkward, my wives and subordinates are all waiting for me to come out. Sigh. However, for these 190,000 people to walk all the way to where Yi Hua was, I reckon that they would still need half a day's time. However, if they were to really walk all the way to where Yi Hua was, how many of them would really be left? Most probably, before they could even see Yi Hua's face, they would all die in this yellow sand. Lord Jiao and Bai Cixin once again gathered 190,000 people and prepared to set off. However, among them, there were already a lot of people who wanted to go back. However, when they thought about what to do if they were to bump into those things on the way back, they would definitely die. Right now, there was still a trace of hope for them to advance forward, but if they were to retreat, it would only be a path of death. If they were able to make a new choice, it was reckoned that a lot of people wouldn't have come to this yellow sand. Although treasures were important, their lives were more important. As the army continued to advance forward, everyone raised their vigilance and paid attention to their surroundings. If a whirlpool appeared, they would have to immediately leave. There were also those giant scorpions that suddenly appeared, and there were even more unknown life forms. However, in less than 10 minutes, a situation occurred once again. This kind of situation caused everyone to despair. Chapter 6:10. This is simply not giving us a way out. The atmosphere of despair spread throughout the entire team. Looking at the gigantic creatures in front of them, a deep sense of powerlessness emerged within the team. Even Lord Jiao and Bai Cixin felt a sense of despair. This boundless land of yellow sand was actually this terrifying. This is something unexpected. And they want to flatten Voidless Realm. We don't even know where Voidless Realm is, this is simply a joke. What should we do? There are so many of them. Everyone in the team revealed out a frightened expression as they muttered. Run! How are we going to run? We are all surrounded. Some martial artists who were capable of flying were no longer able to endure this kind of fear and began flying towards the sky to escape. Many people saw this situation, and their morale fell to the lowest point. There are actually people who are escaping. There are at least over 10,000 of them. Even the sky was covered by a patch of darkness. However, right at this moment, the ground seemed to be covered by something, and everyone couldn't help but raise their head to look. Dozens of gigantic vultures covered the entire sky, and with a ferocious aura, the vultures flew towards the 10,000 people. Facing against dozens of vultures, the 10,000 people were instantly annihilated, and almost all of them were swallowed alive by the vultures in the sky. Everyone's expression froze. This is simply a team that is capable of both land, sea, and air. Right now, the control of the sky and ground is completely in the hands of the enemy. Bai Cixin and Jiao Yi were in despair. With their strength, it is impossible for them to charge out of the encirclement. The battle prowess of the dozens of vultures is too terrifying. Thankfully, after the vultures ate over 10,000 people in the sky, they left and didn't plan to join the battle. This made everyone let out a breath of relief. Jiu Yi and Bai Cixin took a look at each other, and both of them seemed to be very helpless. "Wife, let's fight!" Wang Debao shouted out. Bai Cixin nodded her head and shouted out, "Everyone, listen up, there is already no way back for us. We can only fight to the end, for peace. For justice." Bai Cixin raised the ancient godly item in her hand high up, and the might that was emitted from the ancient godly item made the remaining 180,000 people reveal a gaze filled with fighting spirit. Ancient godly items are good things, they are able to boost morale. Jiu Yi and Wang Debao, who were at the side, also raised the ancient godly item in their hands, and a majestic spiritual pressure swept across the ground, causing all of the mutated animals in the surroundings to tremble. "Kill!" Lord Zhou shouted and took the lead to rush out. Wang Debao and Bai Cixin shouted coldly and rushed down without any hesitation. In this situation, they couldn't care less. They would bring as many as they could back with them. The battle was on the verge of breaking out, and the rate of casualties was dropping by the second. It was chilling. Meanwhile, outside of Voidless Realm's barrier, Yihua had a stern look on his face, and there was already a pile of cigarette butts beneath his feet. This group of people couldn't have gotten lost, right? If you can't even find the entrance of Voidless Realm, then what are you two even coming here for? The people who were standing inside the barrier were curious. It has already been a few hours, even if His Honor were to walk, His Honor should have already arrived, right? Although I am unable to see His Honor's expression, judging from those cigarette butts, His Honor's expression should be very bad. Sister, are those bad guys not coming? Yi Yan tugged at the corner of his sister's clothes. Dong Huangli held on to her little brother's hand. We should be arriving soon, right? Could it be that they're asleep? Yi Yan gasped and pursed his lips. He was originally very excited, but after waiting for so long, he still did not appear. He even wanted to sleep. Dong Huangli rubbed onto her little brother's head. I don't understand either. All of Yi Hua's subordinates were also a bit gloomy. Just what is going on with this group of people? It can't be that they are preparing to stand His Honor up, right? If that's the case, your guts are rather big. How is this standing up? Those people are currently fighting for their lives. Right now, the battlefield was already too horrible to look at. The number of people that were killed had directly dropped to 100,000. It had only been a few hours, and yet, 200,000 people had already disappeared. This was a heavy blow that caused everyone to be unable to breathe. Furthermore, right now, the battle had yet to stop, and the number of people that were killed was still continuously rising. These mutated beasts are truly terrifying. Another hour passed by, and the scene was already unbearable to look at. Out of the originally majestic army, only a measly 30,000 people remained. All of the others had died in battle. What kind of concept was this? 270,000 people were to be left behind in this land of yellow sand forever. The remaining 30,000 people stood blankly on the spot, and there weren't even a few that went to collect the spoils of war, because they didn't even know if they would be able to return or not. Jiu Yi, Bai Cixin, and Wang Debao were already heavily injured, and they were currently gasping for breath. If there was no rescue. Right now, even they probably wouldn't be able to escape. Jiu Yi sat paralyzed on a pile of bloody sand, gasping for breath with a heavy gaze. Wang Debao was currently bandaging his wife's wounds. Looking at the wounds on her delicate skin, he felt a pang in his heart. Bai Cixin also bandaged her husband's wounds, and she said in a low voice, Debao, maybe I should have listened to you before and not participated in this conflict. Wang Debao was stunned for a moment, then he immediately smiled and said, Honey, listen to what you said. Whatever you do, I will support you. Debao, thank you. All these years, you've taken a lot of blame for me. As your wife, I'm really not responsible. Wang Debao gently hugged his wife. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. We won't die. Debao, if we can survive, let's have children, Bai Cixin said softly as she nestled in her husband's arms. After going through so many things, she finally realized that it was a blessing to be able to talk peacefully. Wang Debao was overjoyed. After being married for so many years, Bai Cixin had never wanted children, because the birth of a child would disrupt her rhythm of becoming stronger. However, after hearing his wife's words, he was instantly excited. Okay, when this is over, we'll go home and have children. People would sigh with emotion, especially when their lives were in danger. Some things would be too late for regrets. However, if they survived a disaster, they might be able to comprehend it, but they might also be the same as before. What he said now was just some yearning. Let's return. Jiu Yi, who was at the side, said gravely. The remaining 30,000 people were basically unable to do anything, let alone trample on voidless realm. All of them were trampled by those mutated animals. Bai Cixin and Wang Debao did not object. It was meaningless for them to continue advancing now. They would only be wiped out. Lord Jiu stood up and shouted, "Retreat!" The 30,000 people were taken aback for a moment before they let out an excited roar. It was as if they had won a battle and could finally retreat. They would never come back again. They would never come back to this godforsaken place even if they were beaten to death. The 30,000 people once again harvested the corpses of the mutated animals. They were excited at the thought that they could all be sold for money when they returned. Damn it, I can't even fit it in anymore. However, just as everyone was retreating, there was a sudden movement in the sky. Chapter 6:11. Everyone was attracted by the white light and didn't notice that their boss had disappeared. What is this thing? It can't be another terrifying monster, right? It doesn't seem like it, I feel like there is a figure inside. Human. Everyone exchanged words with each other. However, everyone took out the weapons in their hands in case something unexpected happened. After all, they were already terrified. When the white light disappeared, the 30,000 men gulped and their eyes were filled with amazement. Standing on the sand dune was a woman. This woman was wearing a white robe, and her long hair hung down to her shoulders. Her eyebrows were like the crescent moon, and her eyes were like cold stars. On her forehead, there was a plum blossom mark, which added to her cold and elegant aura. Her face alone was already extremely beautiful. Not to mention her arrogant figure, it was enough to make people drool. Everyone seemed to have forgotten about the previous battle as they stared at the woman who had suddenly appeared. The aura she exuded was like that of a high and mighty fairy. Li Hun clenched her fists and slowly closed her eyes. In his heart, he muttered, "Is this a rebirth? Seems like I have really revived. Heart of loyalty. Chen Jin. You two bastards actually joined hands to kill me. I will settle this score with you slowly. Dan Xian, I was blind to fall in love with you. Bastard." Everyone realized that there was something wrong with this woman's aura. The entire surface of the sand was shaking, and a terrifying resentment was emitted from the woman's body. Li Hun abruptly opened her bloodshot eyes and shouted, "Not a single man is a good man. Go to hell." Soul receding Soul raised his hands, and a terrifying spirit pressure appeared in his palms. 1,000 crimson smoke. The red spiritual energy condensed in his palms immediately pounced toward the 30,000 people present. Everyone cursed out loud. Why did women like to say this? Who the F***ck provoked you? Who should you go and find? It smells so good. It's quite fragrant. It feels like Chanel No. 5. A strange fragrance drifted among the 30,000 people. Everyone's eyes became dazed and even intoxicated. Holy shit! The giant scorpion is here again. Centipede. Centipede. Serpent. F***ck. The 30,000 players immediately started attacking each other. In their eyes, their opponents were those terrifying mutated animals. This was somewhat similar to Absolute Heaven's hypnosis. However, Soul Detachment's hypnosis was not hypnosis. It was an illusion. Looking at the 30,000 men gradually falling at her feet, Soul leaving Soul felt refreshed both physically and mentally, and her delicate body disappeared on the spot. A light breeze blew past, and 300,000 Sky Wrath disappeared just like that. Even the last 30,000 Sky Wrath had fallen. As the wind howled, the corpses were gradually covered or eaten by animals that rushed over. Everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. However, the cigarette butts beneath Yihua's feet were already piled up. In the end, Donghuang Baiji still walked out and said tenderly, "Yihua, don't wait anymore, I reckon that he won't be coming." Yihua was angered to the point that the hand that was holding the cigarette was trembling. "I have even thought of my lines, and you guys actually stood me up. Motherf asterisk cur. You are making fun of me." In actuality, Yihua didn't intentionally go and feel the spiritual energy fluctuation, and was just waiting leisurely, not knowing what was going on. Lai Gu. Let's go and take a look at where those people are. Yihua threw away the cigarette but in his hand and said anxiously. Lai Gu stepped out of the barrier, seemingly wanting to change back to his original form. Seeing Lai Gu's action, Wei Cheng immediately knew what Lai Gu wanted to do and coughed hurriedly. Lai Gu nearly forgot that his honor's wife had seen my original form before. If I were to reveal my original form right now, his honor would definitely stew me. In actuality, Lai Gu was just trying to act cool earlier, and something almost happened to him. This isn't something that can be solved by kneeling on a keyboard. Lai Gu disappeared on the spot, and not long later, he returned. Standing in front of Yihua, Lai Gu said respectfully, "Your honor, they are all dead." Yihua, motherf asterisk cur. Didn't we agree to attack Voidless Realm? All of them actually died on the way here. Do you guys even have any sincerity? Sure enough, humans are a bunch of untrustworthy people, causing me to sit here foolishly for a few hours, and even smoked a few packs of cigarettes. Yihua slowly stood up, patted off the cigarette ash on his body, then walked into the barrier. While looking at his subordinates, he said gravely, "Whose F***king idea was this? To make me sit outside and get blown by the wind for a few hours?" Qinya said helplessly, "Yihua, don't curse in front of a child." All of Yihua's subordinates immediately pointed their fingers at Dou Fushi. Dou Fushi had a stupefied look on his face. "Why is it my fault again?" Yihua said gravely, "Seems like newbies need to be taught properly." All of Dou Fushi's subordinates revealed out an evil smile, then shouted out, "Subordinate obeys." Dou Fushi felt as if he was struck by lightning. "Your honor, just a few days ago, you said that I did a good job, and the suggestion that you gave me was great. Why did it become like this?" "It really isn't my fault, your honor, save me." Yihua brought along his wife and son and left. With a sinister smile on his face, Lai Gu looked at Dou Fushi and said, "Dou Fushi, this is the result of being in the limelight." Yi Zizi pouted her mouth. "Sigh, this should be the result of recklessly coming up with ideas. It's fine if your honor is satisfied, if not, then you're finished." Brett laughed lightly. "It seems like my mood has become much better recently, if not, I wouldn't be laughing." Zi Shan smiled sweetly. "Fushi, little friend, a loose tongue causes trouble, you have to be more careful in the future." Only now did Dou Fushi understand a principle. If his honor asks a question, if you don't have 100% confidence in answering, don't ever answer. If not, you will be out of luck. His honor is simply temperamental. Big brother, big sister, be gentler, don't hit my face, I still haven't recovered from the last time. Dou Fusher obediently held onto his head and squatted down. Sun Fong laughed lightly. Just because you called me big sister, I'll just pat your head. This time, Dou Fusher learned his lesson. Last time, he called me big brother and big sister, but now, he called me big brother and big sister. Being in this team is like training one's mind. Yun Lang raised his arrogant head, seemingly saying, "You are truly too young, you dare to say anything." After this incident, Dou Fusher no longer dared to recklessly bring up any suggestions. When I patted Colonel Jin's head, I actually got lightly brushed by Erha's tail. Damn it, sooner or later, I will stew you into a bowl of dog meat soup and let you show off. Right now, in Wang Debao's villa. The three people who disappeared were currently sitting on the sofa and eating instant noodles while looking at if you are the one with a smile on the corner of their mouths, as if they didn't care about anything at all. After drinking the soup, Qing Tiandi placed down the instant noodles in his hand, then took out a napkin and wiped his mouth, then said, "We are in the same group, there's no need to be restrained." In the same group? Bai Cixin asked confusedly. Zhou Yi knew about it, which was why he didn't say anything. Chapter 6:12. Bai Cixin thought that the Peace Association was a competitor, but she didn't expect that the Peace Association was just a chess piece in Qing Tian's hands. "Big brother Qing, why did you suddenly pull us back?" Wang Debao asked curiously. "Oh, a very powerful person came. If I didn't pull you guys back, you guys would probably die." Qing Tian folded the tissue and threw it into the trash can. Bai Cixin said confusedly, "A powerful person. It's what I said last time." Qing Tian laughed lightly. Bai Cixin and Wang Debao turned pale with fright. Qing Tian did say that last time, but he also said that he was joking. How did it become real? Looking at the shocked look on everyone's faces, Qing Tian said faintly, "You guys have completed the mission well this time. Just say that Voidless Realm took those 300,000 heads. In any case, there are no survivors, you guys can say whatever you want." The corner of Zhou Ye's mouth twitched. What a vicious person, making something out of nothing. Bai Cixin became silent, because she originally wanted to live a good life with her husband after this matter is over. Wang Debao was also waiting for his wife's decision. As long as his wife says to withdraw, he will definitely not turn back. But right now, Bai Cixin was worried about Qing Tian. This temperamental man, I know too much about her and her husband, so how could he possibly let us go? It is normal for him to kill us to silence us. Then, what should we do next? Bai Cixin let out a sigh of relief and asked. Wang Debao, who was at the side, revealed a disappointed look. My wife is still not willing to let go. Is power really that tempting? This time, Wang Debao misunderstood his wife. Bai Cixin didn't want her and her husband to be silenced. Qing Tian leaned on the sofa and laughed. You guys just have to send out the news, you don't have to worry about anything else. Yes. Zhou Yi replied respectfully. Yes. Bai Cixin could only agree, and Wang Debao nodded his head. Since my wife has made a decision again, I have to help her too. Within Voidless Realm, the two little fellows were originally unhappy, but they quickly recovered and continued to play. However, as a supreme overlord, Yi Hua was unable to recover from his shock. Originally, today was supposed to be a good day, everything had already been arranged, and all that was left was to wait for the actors to come onto the stage. Who would have known that all of them would die on the way here? They are truly too weak. Hubby, it's alright, don't be angry anymore. Qinya placed her hands onto her husband's shoulders and lightly massaged them. The Empress even sat at the side and peeled fruits for Yi Hua. The Empress looked just like she was coaxing a child. However, being served by the most beautiful woman in the world, Yi Hua felt slightly better. As expected, a woman's tenderness is the best thing to put out the fire. Looking at the gloomy expression on her husband's face, Qingye and Donghuang Baiji really wanted to laugh. Last night, they were still discussing their lines. They had even thought of the poses they should take. In the end, they were stood up today. How could they not be angry? Yihua, do you think that they will pin the crime on Voidless Realm? Donghuang Baiji peeled off the skin of the grape, then brought it to her husband's mouth. Yihua enjoyed the Empress's service and said gravely, "Of course I will." Just thinking about it made him feel uncomfortable. If he was the one who killed them, he definitely wouldn't say anything. But now, they were all dead before they could even reach him. He didn't even have the chance to act cool. Feeling that the other party had turned the tables, he was very unhappy. Thinking about how he had been sitting outside in the wind for a few hours, his mood became even worse. Then, what is the purpose of them doing this? Donghuang Baiji asked curiously. However, in her heart, she wasn't too worried. My husband is so formidable, I only have to stand at the side and shout 666, then put on a look of worship. Don't men like their women to be like this? Then I will just satisfy my husband. What else can it be? To make Voidless Realm the public enemy of the entire world. Qingye said eerily, and a cold flash could be seen flashing past her eyes. Voidless Realm is truly a group of people who harbor evil intentions. Become the public enemy of the entire world. Yihua didn't think of this point. If I really become the public enemy of the entire world, wouldn't there be even more people coming to die? I feel that Qingye's idea is pretty good. Then, let's just become the public enemy of the entire world. Let's gather tens of millions of people to come to Voidless Realm. These people are too bad, Donghuang Baiji shouted out. Yihua took a glance, then said, and they are too bad. Hubby, do you have any good ideas? Donghuang Baiji asked coquettishly. With such a powerful man protecting her, Donghuang Baiji naturally had to appear weak and frail so that her husband's vanity would soar. Yihua still didn't know that as long as they had a request, they would say husband to the left and husband to the right, and if they didn't have a request, they would call him Yihua, Yihua. Yes. Yihua said calmly, seeming as if everything was within his grasp, and he had an appearance of having the entire world in his hands. Qingye and Donghuang Baiji listened attentively. We just have to wait, the conspiracy will naturally appear. Yihua didn't want to take the initiative to attack. If he did that, he would seem very brainless. Are we going to wait for others to come up to us? Donghuang Baiji felt that her husband only wanted to show off, and he didn't care about anything else. Qingye understood Yihua very well. By remaining silent, Qingye could also be considered as supporting Yihua in disguise. Yihua said in a low voice, no matter how big a conspiracy is, there will come a day where it will be exposed. Aren't the two of you curious? That's right, this curiosity can only be filled with lives. In order to frame Voidless Realm, God raising heaven and earth used 300,000 lives. In actuality, in Yihua's eyes, this number of lives wasn't anything. In the past, he had seen people who were even more inhumane. There were even people who used the lives of millions of people to create weapons. Would Qingye and Donghuang Baiji still dare to resist Yihua? It was obviously impossible. In this family, Yihua's words were the law. However, on the second day, a ferocious storm immediately engulfed the entire world. This was a public criticism conference. And that was, Voidless Realm cruelly killed 300,000 people. Their methods were extremely ferocious. In the past, it was always kept a secret, and only the people within the circle of power would know about it. However, this time, it was directly made public. In fact, a lot of people didn't even know what Voidless Realm was, and yet, they actually killed 300,000 people. This is too ferocious, right? The ignorant onlookers immediately pinned a big hat onto Voidless Realm. With just a crusade on the internet, such a ferocious place should have been burned down. However, this wasn't the end of targeting Voidless Realm. Among them, Voidless Realm's rule was exposed. Things like exterminating entire families at the drop of a hat, entrapping people at the drop of a hat. In any case, all of the bad things that happened in Voidless Realm were all reported. As for the good things that happened in Voidless Realm, there was even a photo of the Empress on the front page of every big news. This was the first time that the Empress's appearance was revealed to the public, and in an instant, she captured the hearts of countless men. She was too beautiful, she was simply too beautiful. Chapter 6:13. But could such a beautiful woman be that kind of executioner? All the men expressed their doubts. However, it was unknown who had actually released the video of the North-South martial arts competition, and it had even been edited to show the cruel side of the Empress to the world. Seeing the Empress order the execution of those who begged for mercy, everyone's hearts were filled with terror. Of course, there was also indignation. How could a woman have so much power? Who gave it to her? However, there were also a great many youths who were attracted by the Empress's cold figure. This was the true aloof goddess who would kill hundreds of people at the drop of a hat. In fact, she had even slaughtered hundreds of thousands. Too domineering. Of course, this was only the minority. Most of the people were calling to boycott Voidless Realm, and there were even some people who were shouting, "Get out of Voidless Realm." This trend was becoming more and more intense, to the point where Voidless Realm wanted to organize their people to attack Voidless Realm once again. When Voidless Realm heard that Voidless Realm was going to attack Voidless Realm quickly come out and surrender. A slogan of "Down with Voidless Realm" swept through the entire Voidless Realm. I have never heard of such an exceedingly ferocious organization before. Killing 300,000 people in one go. Oh my God. In ancient times, it was normal for two armies to clash, but times were different. 300,000 was a huge number of people. Right now, inside Voidless Realm, Yihua was currently holding onto his tablet and looking at his wife's figure. A feeling of vanity was currently lingering in his heart. This is my woman, the woman who acts like a spoiled child in my arms every day, you bunch of idiots. Qingye and Donghuang Baizhi were also looking at the news report, and they were angered to the point that their faces were red. As the saying goes, good things don't go out the door, but outside news travels 1,000 miles. Baizhi, this cover photo is not bad. It's beautiful. Too beautiful. I, the Supreme Overlord, am truly too happy. Yihua actually laughed out loud, and at this very moment, he wished that he could place the Empress on the bed and roll around with her. Donghuang Baizhi rolled her eyes at her husband. Why is he still thinking about these things at a time like this? Yihua said with a smile, look at this posture of giving the order, this expression of yours, you are really giving me face. Baizhi, well done. Very good. Alright, this seems to be the first time that Yihua is praising his wife, and furthermore, it is an important praise. Qingye expressed that she was unhappy. Why aren't you praising me? We are both your wives, aren't you being too biased? However, Qingye was thinking in her heart, in the future, I will also do something to make my husband praise me, and make my husband feel proud of me. Your Honor, wait a moment, the final circle is about to begin. Yihua shook his head. Right now, Yizizi's gaming addiction is quite big. Originally, Yizizi was about to finish eating chicken every day, but for some reason, her head was shot by an AWM. Even Yizizi herself was stupefied, I was actually killed by a sniper. Yizizi hurriedly switched to death replay, I was actually killed at such a far distance. Fuck, he is definitely a cheater. Pouting her small mouth, Yizizi conveniently pinched Zhu Tian's ear to vent her anger. Zhu Tian, who had fainted for so long, had already been pinched by Yizizi. This fellow's injuries are more or less healed, and he should be waking up soon. However, it might take a very long time for him to recover his strength. Yi Zizi said with a grin while pinching onto Zhu Tian's neck. Meanwhile, Zhu Tian was currently like a dead cat, his 4 limbs were powerless. Give him to me. Oh. Yihua took the opportunity to pinch onto Zhu Tian's neck. He decided to return Zhu Tian to them so that Brett wouldn't come over to ask about the situation from time to time. Pinching onto Zhu Tian's neck, Yihua arrived at Dongfang family. There was actually no one in the main hall. Sensing Brett's aura, Yihua reckoned that Brett should be in the backyard. When Yihua arrived at the backyard, he went into a slight daze. Dongfang Yuan and Guan Yinxin could be seen carefully teaching Brett how to prune branches, and Brett was also very serious. To think that Brett would actually have such a moment, the power of love is truly great. Cough. Yihua coughed lightly. The 3 beautiful women were startled for a moment, and soon after, they shouted out respectfully, "Your Honor." Catch. Yihua tossed Zhu Tian. The pitiful Zhu Tian drew an arc in the air, and Brett hurriedly hugged onto Zhu Tian and shouted out coquettishly, "Your Honor." Zhu Tian, who was in a coma, would often be tossed around by people, and in the future, he would be in an even more miserable state. Chapter 6:14. After Yihua left, Dongfang Yuan, who was at the side, asked curiously, "This?" Brett stroked absolute heaven's fur and said with a light smile, "This is absolute heaven." "Ah!" Guan Yinxin cried out in surprise. They had never seen Zhu Tian's original body before. She never thought that the man she liked was actually a cute kitten. So cute. Dongfang Yuan did not feel anything at all. There were even skeletons in the team. Compared to them, absolute heaven was much more adorable. Brett also smiled sweetly and said, "Yeah, I've never hugged him before. So obedient. I want a hug too." Guan Yinxin said from the side. Zhu Tian usually had a cold expression on his face, causing Guan Yinxin to not dare to tease him. Now, she finally had the chance to bully him. Brett was much more magnanimous now, and he passed the cat version of absolute heaven to Guan Yinxin. Guan Yinxin hugged it in her arms and exclaimed that it was so cute. As for absolute heaven waking up at that time, that would be truly despairing. He would be abused by these 3 women. Yihua returned back to Leisure Bar once again, and was preparing to make a Chinese jianbing to eat. However, when he walked to the entrance of the alley, he didn't see the auntie selling jianbing, and suddenly, he thought of something. Could it be that Wuli had gone? "You didn't listen to my advice." Standing at the entrance of the alleyway, Yihua let out a breath. If this Wuli really left, I reckon that he wouldn't be able to come back. As for aunties, perhaps I won't be able to eat that hot fruit pancake anymore. At this time, the auntie was still waiting for her child to come home. She had been away for a few days, and logically speaking, she should be back soon. In order to wait for her son to come back, the aunt didn't go to set up her stall for the past few days. However, the more she waited, the more anxious she felt. As the days passed by, the old lady also saw the news. Voidless Realm had actually massacred 300,000 people. Although I don't know what Voidless Realm is, I recognize the woman who appeared on the television. Isn't that young man's wife? He had even bought some pancakes from his stall. The middle-aged woman did not think that this woman was a heinous person. She wondered if the report was wrong. After seeing that so many people had died, the big ant also felt that the world had changed, and it didn't seem like a complete world anymore. It was too cruel. Ding dong. Ding dong. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. The auntie paused, and a smile appeared on her face. It seemed that her son had returned. This isn't right. My son should have the key, why would he press the doorbell? The middle-aged woman walked to the door, still very vigilant. Who is it? Standing outside was the man who had received the suicide note back then. It had been a few days since he had delivered it. This feeling was really not good, especially when he saw the lifeless eyes of the other party's family members. Moreover, this family was the family of a squad leader. "I'm here to deliver a letter," the man shouted from outside. The auntie was even more confused. Were there still people delivering letters in this day and age? Could he be a swindler? That's why he wouldn't open the door. "Leave, or I'll call the police," the middle-aged woman shouted. "Auntie, it's your son's letter," the man shouted again. The middle-aged woman didn't believe it. Her son had never sent a letter. "My son will call me if he needs anything." The man let out a light sigh. "I can't bear to say that this is a will, but at the very least, I have to hand this will over to the other party. Auntie, this is your son's will." "A will?" The middle-aged woman was shocked. She didn't care if the man was a scammer or not. She opened the door and said, "What did you say? How could my son write a will?" The man first bowed to the middle-aged woman, then handed over the letter with both of his hands. "Auntie, my condolences." The middle-aged woman's gaze stared fixedly at the pure white envelope. She stretched out her trembling right hand, and a bad premonition emerged from the bottom of her heart. "Auntie, Captain Wu sacrificed himself for peace and justice, please," the man said gravely, but he wasn't able to finish what he wanted to say. The middle-aged woman didn't hear what the man said at all. Her trembling hand tore open the envelope, took out the letter inside, and slowly opened it. At the bottom left corner of the letter, there was even a bloodstain. "Dear mother, if you read this letter, it means that your son is no longer able to fulfill his filial duties. I'm sorry." When the middle-aged woman saw this line of words, the middle-aged woman felt that the world was spinning, and the man hurriedly held on to her. The middle-aged woman sat on the ground paralyzed. Looking at the words that her son wrote, her tears wetted the letter one by one. When the middle-aged woman finished reading the letter, a mournful wail suddenly broke out. "Son! My son, why did you leave your mother alone?" The middle-aged woman shouted in pain as she pounded on her chest. The man took a deep breath and squatted down. "Auntie, I'm sorry." The middle-aged woman grabbed onto the man's shoulder and shouted out miserably, "Tell me, how did my son die? I beg you to tell me." "Auntie, you should have seen the report on the news. Captain Wu is inside the report. Captain Wu sacrificed himself for the sake of righteousness. Auntie, you should be proud of your son." "No. I don't want to be proud, I only want my son back. Return my son back to me." The middle-aged woman was completely confused as she shook the man with all of her might. Towards this kind of situation, the man had encountered it before, and thus, he comforted the middle-aged woman properly. "Auntie, quickly enter the house." The middle-aged woman shouted out while crying, "That is my son's corpse. Where is his corpse?" "I'm sorry, everyone's corpse was buried in that desert." After finished speaking, the man turned around and left. At the moment when the elevator door closed, the man heard even more miserable wails coming from outside. Perhaps Yihua still didn't know about this matter, but back then, he also advised Wu Li to just properly accompany the middle-aged woman and not think about other things. Unfortunately, between happiness and despair, Wu Li still chose despair, and left his old mother alone. On this day, Yihua was currently teaching his son how to wield a sword. The little fellow, Yi Yan, had also grown a bit taller, and the sword that he was holding onto was even longer than him. "Hold on to the sword firmly," Yihua shouted out gravely. Yi Yan's gaze was very firm. Even though his hands were trembling, he was still holding onto the sword's hilt tightly. Dong Wangli, who was at the side, appeared very calm, looking as if she had been abused by her mother. Yihua took a sip of tea, his gaze was calm, and he had the appearance of a strict father. Qingye and Donghuang Baiji sat at the side and began learning how to knit a sweater. From time to time, they would turn around and look at their child, and a smile could be seen on the corner of their mouth. This kind of life sure is warm. Right at this moment, Yihua received Wei Chang's voice transmission. After hearing it, Yihua's brows wrinkled. Auntie actually came to the bar. This has never happened before in the past. Could it be that? Yihua, what's the matter? Qingye and Donghuang Baiji felt the change in their husband. After all, it was very rare for Yihua to frown, and as long as he frowned, it would be a big matter for him. Thus, the two women became confused. Yihua took a deep breath. Auntie came to the bar. Auntie? Is it the auntie who sells crepes at the alley entrance? Qingye asked tenderly. Chapter 6:15. Auntie, what are you doing at leisure bar? What's the matter? Donghuang Baiji asked curiously. Yihua let out a light sigh, then looked at Donghuang Baiji and said, Auntie's son is most likely among the 300,000 people, and Auntie has also seen you before. With that, the two girls understood that the auntie was here to settle the score. In actuality, I had already tried to persuade her son, but unfortunately, her son still chose a path of no return. Donghuang Baiji felt that she should go and explain to Donghuang Baiji that she and the others did not kill her son at all. Yihua, I will go with you to explain. Yihua said faintly, no need, I can go by myself. Yihua felt that it was useless to explain too much. If there was a cause, there would be an effect. This was a fact that could not be changed. I, the Supreme Overlord, am not a good person. I am already doing my best to persuade my beloved wife to explain such a thing to me. With a heavy heart, Yihua arrived at Leisure Bar, and Blood Demon was currently waiting respectfully for him. Your Honor. Where is he? Yihua asked. Blood Demon lowered his head and said, stand outside. Stand? Why didn't you let her in? How long has it been? Yihua's tone sank. Right now, it was currently a thunderstorm. The Blood Demon didn't understand why his honor was angry, but he still lowered his head and said, it has been 2 days. 2 days. Why didn't you inform me earlier? Yihua hurriedly walked out. To Yihua, this ant was the first human that dared to scold him. Of course, she was also the first human that Yihua didn't want to kill, and also the first human that Yihua got to know. The Blood Demon had a terrified look on his face. His honor actually got angry because of a human. How is this possible? Yihua walked to the entrance of Leisure Bar, and sure enough, he saw that familiar figure that was currently being drenched by the heavy rain. Yihua materialized an umbrella in his hand and walked forward. With a wave of his hand, the ant's clothes that were originally wet became warm. Why aren't you coming in? Yihua asked gravely. The middle-aged woman looked up at the unfamiliar young man, her eyes devoid of any anger. Only after a long while did he finally ask. His voice was extremely hoarse. Can you return my son's corpse to me? Looking at the expectant gaze of the auntie, as well as the look of despair on her face, for the first time, Yihua had a different feeling. The face of despair wasn't that beautiful anymore. It had already been a few years since Yihua got to know the auntie, and what Yihua saw the most was the amiable smile on the auntie's face. Even when the auntie was scolding Yihua, the auntie's smile was still that kind of gentle. That kind of gentleness would probably never be seen again. Seeing that Yihua wasn't speaking, the auntie immediately kneeled down in front of Yihua and begged, I beg of you. Towards humans kowtowing to him, Yihua had always felt very comfortable in his heart. However, at this moment, Yihua was extremely displeased, and an evil aura gushed out from his chest. A desolate scene froze in front of them. A woman was kneeling in front of a young man with her head lowered. The sky was still pouring, and it was getting heavier and heavier. It landed on the ground with a rustling sound. Yihua tightened his grip on the umbrella and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry." This was Yihua's first time apologizing to a human, and this was also Yihua's last time apologizing to a human. The rainstorm was still continuing, and the auntie slowly stood up. Without taking another look at Yihua, the auntie turned around and walked towards the entrance of the alleyway, and the clothes that she was wearing were instantly drenched by the rainstorm. At this moment, Qingye and Donghuang Baizhi also jogged out of the house. The two of them leaned against Yihua's side and looked at that lonely and desolate back view of Yihua, all the way until Yihua disappeared from their sight. The pain of losing her son caused the auntie to lose her motivation to live. Yihua stood there for a very long time, and Qingye and Donghuang Baizhi also accompanied the auntie for a very long time. The two of them were able to sense the emotions that their husband was currently feeling, and they knew that his mood was definitely not good. "Let's go in." After a long time, Yihua said unhurriedly. After walking into the bar, Yihua sat beside the bar counter, and Blood Demon hurriedly poured a cup of wine for Yihua. Yihua had always been a person who took small sips of wine, but today, he took a sip of wine. However, all of this was because of a human auntie. Qingye and Donghuang Baizhi sat beside their husband and accompanied him attentively. Yihua let out a breath, then said while wrinkling his brows, "This auntie is the first person who dares to reprimand me. No, there are a lot of people who reprimand me, but all of them are dead. This auntie is the only one who made me." Speaking up to here, a ray of red light flashed past Yihua's eyes. Who am I to blame for all of this? Peace Association? Justice Alliance? Or Wu Li himself? Or even me? Hearing this, Blood Demon was also extremely shocked. That auntie actually dares to reprimand his honor. That auntie is actually still alive. That auntie actually dares to reprimand his honor. Yihua laughed lightly, however, this laughter contained a bit of self-mockery. "The crepes that this auntie makes is the most fragrant that I have ever eaten. And she is also rather stingy. Every time, she would still charge me money. Doesn't she know that me eating at your place is already giving me a lot of face? And she actually still dares to charge me money." Yihua smiled and drank another mouthful of wine. Chapter 6:16. I almost can't recognize Yihua anymore. Donghuang Baizhi mumbled. In Donghuang Baizhi's heart, Yihua's style of doing things had always been iron-blooded, to the point where he wouldn't even give any face to his subordinates, let alone an auntie who was only selling Chinese crepes. Qingye said lightly, "Perhaps, it's because we still don't know enough." In actuality, Qingye had known Yihua for a slightly longer time than Donghuang Baizhi. In Qingye's heart, Yihua was an extremely cold and indifferent man, and it was to the point that Qingye even had a kind of feeling that Yihua didn't like people. However, every time Qingye followed Yihua to the alleyway to buy breakfast, she would be able to feel that at that moment, Yihua would loosen up a bit. Perhaps, Yihua had treated this auntie as a relative, and only a relative would accept the other party's reprimand. Yihua, who walked out of Leisure Bar, looked towards the entrance of the alleyway, and his gaze immediately became serious. A familiar stall, and even that familiar back view. Yihua walked over with large strides. It was unknown what his mood was right now, but in any case, it was the kind that was very complicated. However, when he walked closer, he discovered that he had actually seen wrongly. This was indeed an auntie, but she was no longer the auntie from before. However, the cart was exactly the same. "Hey handsome, do you want one?" The woman selling pancakes turned her head and asked with a smile. Yihua's face sank, and soon after, he shook his head, "No need." With the change of people, the popularity of the fruit pancake was also taken away. The woman smiled and said nothing. After a short while, Yihua asked, "What about the person who sold the medicine here earlier?" The woman turned around and smiled. "Oh, you mean Su Qin. She sold this tool to me. I heard she even sold her house. She seems to have returned to her hometown." Su Qin, so this aunt's name is Su Qin. After so many years, I only found out today that this name is very nice to hear. In the future, don't set up a stall at the entrance of this alley. Yihua shouted out coldly. The woman immediately wrinkled her brows, and when she came into contact with Yihua's bone-piercingly cold gaze, she immediately got a fright. Muttering that he was sick, she hurriedly pushed the cart and left. Yihua took out a stick of cigarette and looked at the familiar position. It was as if he could hear an auntie saying beside his ear, "Young man, you have to pay for the extra egg." After finishing smoking the cigarette, Yihua extinguished the cigarette. It seemed like he had also extinguished the past that was hard to come by. At the moment when Yihua turned around, Yihua was still that supreme overlord. Those who complied would still have a sliver of hope for survival. Rebel. He could only go to hell to repent. Qing Tiandi heard the sound of the stove and the sound of the spatula ringing out from the phone. Shi Xiaotian said impatiently, "If you have something to fart, then say it. Let's meet up on Tuesday night." "I'm not free." "Don't worry, I won't disturb your brother Xiaotian cooking." However, right at this moment, the manager's scolding voice rang out from the phone, and even Qing Tiandi heard it. "Shi Xiaotian. How long do you take to cook? Do you not want to work anymore?" Coming right away, coming right away." Shi Xiaotian said gravely, "Let's talk about it when the time comes." Hearing the busy tone that came out from the phone, Qing Tiandi shook his head helplessly. "These old monsters really can't sit still. I have to invite them one by one. Don't they know how to do it themselves? One is more and more crafty than the other. It is only I, Qing Tiandi, who is too naive." Right now, Li Han, who had reincarnated, cut a man's neck, and a young lady was so frightened that she hid at the corner of the wall. There isn't a single good thing in men. Do you know? You have to rely on yourself. Li Han shouted lightly towards the shivering young lady. Shaking off the blood on the knife, Li Han walked out of the house. "These few days, I have already killed a lot of men. Killing is especially satisfying. In any case, as long as I see other people being sweet and affectionate, I will know that that man definitely doesn't have good intentions. Kill. Seeing other people quarreling, scumbag. Kill. In any case, I am going to kill all the bad men in the world. Men are not good things. Other than lying to others, there is nothing else." Li Han's current state of mind was the typical one that couldn't bear to see other people doing well. Why can other people be more fortunate than me? Just for the sake of satisfying myself by killing everyone. But right now, killing ordinary people is no longer enough to satisfy Li Han's needs. Even though I am so strong, I have still been deceived by men. If I want to kill, I must kill strong men. That way, I can save more women. Beauty, it is very dangerous for you to stand at the side of the road. Dou Fusher looked at Li Han, who was in a daze, and shouted. This woman is really beautiful. Chapter 6:17. Li Han took a glance at Dou Fusher, then turned around and left. Why didn't he kill Dou Fusher? That was because Dou Fusher did not have a girlfriend by his side. If there was a girl by his side, Li Han would definitely kill all the heartless men in the world. Dou Fusher should be glad that he does not have a girlfriend, right? However, after seeing Li Han leaving, Dou Fusher did not have the intention to strike up a conversation with her. Dou Fusher's current action had undoubtedly saved his life once again. If he had gone to strike up a conversation with her just now, before he could even shout for help, he would have been killed by Li Han. Dou Fusher had unintentionally saved his life twice. Dou Fusher, who turned around and left, muttered, I did a divination today, and my life is in danger. Seems like I have to be careful and not get hit by a flower pot. I have to be careful when crossing the road, and not get hit by an electric bike. I am Dou Fusher, a gold raider, how can I die, hee. In the blink of an eye, it was already Tuesday night. Qing Tian appeared on a street that was filled with midnight snacks, casually found a table outside and sat down, then began ordering. Although the world had changed, eating skewers for midnight snacks had never changed. Enjoying delicious food was a kind of enjoyment. This streaky pork is not bad, give me another 20 RMB. Qing Tian shouted. He felt that it was not bad. Sure, give me another case of beer. Okay, coming right up. While eating the skewers, Qing Tian leisurely waited. Suddenly, a fat man sat down. This man's fat was not fat, he was muscular and sturdy. He was the chef Shi Xiaotian. Damn! Why did you call me here? Shi Xiaotian took out a bottle of beer and directly bit open the bottle cap with his teeth, then raised his head and started drinking. Then, he grabbed the skewers and started eating, causing the surrounding people to sigh, but they did not dare to do anything. This Shi Xiaotian's physique was truly a bit scary. Brother Xiaotian, don't be anxious, there are still a few people. Qing Tian smiled. Shi Xiaotian snorted and continued eating. Not long later, a woman who wore a white big round hat and a noble white evening dress leisurely walked over, causing the surrounding men to be dumbstruck, and some even whistled. The woman didn't seem to mind. She even winked at the drunk men teasingly. Sister Nine, you're here. Have a seat. Qing Tiandi was also very polite and personally set up a chair for Jiuling. Jiuling chuckled, heaven and earth, you're not stingy today. He made such a big move recently, how can he be stingy? Shi Xiaotian picked his teeth with a bamboo stick. I'm just acting as your vanguard. Just as he finished speaking, a bicycle stopped beside him. Chewing arranged her tools and sat down with a smile. She didn't say anything. As soon as Chewing sat down, a child carrying a school bag also sat down. Brother Sin. Qing Tian called out with a smile. Children are sins. Although he looked like a child, he was actually very old. Du Zui put his bag aside and picked up the beef tendon to eat. Qing Tiandi, why did you call us here? Qing Tiandi didn't beat around the bush, this little brother has already paved the path for you guys, Voidless Realm is just around the corner. Du Zui ate until the corner of his mouth was filled with grease. He didn't have the demeanor of an expert at all as he said vaguely, you did so much just to force us to come out, right? Of course not, it's been a long time since we got together. Besides, everyone knows about the benefits of Voidless Realm. How could the four of them not know about it? A small world, if it grows up, it will become a big world, and they will be the master of that big world. How exciting would that be? However, all experts wanted face, and without a good excuse, they didn't want to do something that would tarnish their reputation. And Qing Tiandi was going to pave the path for them, to openly fight their way into Voidless Realm. This was also the reason why Chewing asked Zhou Yi to do that, because that small world was truly too tempting. Jiuling said, Qing Tiandi, what are you thinking of to trick us again? Shi Xiaotian sneered, you're full of evil tricks, I won't believe you. Chu Ying's silence was Kim's philosophy. Big brother, big sister, why don't you all believe in me, Qing Tiandi? If we manage to take down Voidless Realm, wouldn't it be good for us to be the masters of Voidless Realm? Qing Tiandi maintained a smile on his face. Just like what Shi Xiaotian said, he was full of evil tricks. Qing Tiandi, do you think that we don't know what you are planning? Dusue took out a napkin and wiped his mouth, then casually threw the napkin on the ground. Seeing this action, Qing Tiandi wrinkled his brows, but he didn't say anything. Jiuling took out a pair of sunglasses from her bag. If I had known earlier, I would have gone to play mahjong. It's boring, I'll be leaving first. After finished speaking, Jiuling stood up and left. Shi Xiaotian drank another bottle of beer, then said, I'm going home to study the recipes. Dusue carried his school bag and said lightly, I still have to go to school tomorrow. In an instant, 3 people left, and his first love was still sitting there. Qing Tiandi squeezed out a smile and said, Brother Chu, how about we work together? I still have to wake up early for work tomorrow, bye-bye. Chu Ying stood up and left on her bicycle. Looking at Chu Ying's back view that was getting further and further away, the corner of Qing Tiandi's mouth twitched slightly. His smiling face slowly darkened, and a trace of viciousness flashed past his eyes. After a long while, Qing Tiandi also stood up and left. Boss, you still haven't paid the bill. The boss hurriedly chased after Qing Tiandi and wanted to stop him. But before his hand could even touch Qing Tiandi's clothes, the boss was sent flying, and it was unknown whether the boss was dead or alive. Even the shop assistant didn't dare to chase after Qing Tiandi rashly. This man is a bit scary. However, if one were to observe carefully, a trace of an arc appeared on the corner of Qing Tiandi's mouth. High up in the night sky, the 4 people who just left were standing in the sky. This Qing Tiandi is still the same as before. Dusue sneered. Jiuling laughed tenderly, doesn't that mean that he still wants to scam us? Shi Xiaotian pinched his neck and said eerily, I really want to wring his neck off. His plot didn't succeed, so he vented his anger on the boss. He really hasn't changed. Chu Ying chuckled. In fact, the 5 of them had cooperated before, but Qing Tiandi was trying to scam them, so the 4 of them didn't want to have anything to do with him. Sometimes, they even couldn't help but fight with him. However, they came from the same place and could be considered fellow countrymen. Killing one of them would mean one less. This time, we'll do it ourselves. Dusue grinned. Qing Tiandi had done so much to pave the way for them, so there was no need for him to intervene. Chapter 6:18. When do we make our move? Chu Ying asked in a low voice. Right now, everything was ready and they could make their move at any time. Dusue looked towards the direction of Voidless Realm, then said, there is no time like the present. Since we have already come out, let's make our move tonight. Shi Xiaotian and Jiuling, who were at the side, nodded. Since they had already come out, they might as well finish what they had to do. Did they still have to choose an auspicious day? They didn't believe that. Meanwhile, in the middle of the desert outside of Voidless Realm, there was currently a bonfire, and there were a few people sitting around the bonfire. From time to time, those people would let out laughter. Wife, grill a chicken wing for me right now. Yi Hong was rather manly, he was actually able to order Zishan who was beside him to grill a chicken wing for him. Zishan smiled gently and said, all right, I'll grill some chicken wings for you. LV Liang smiled at the side and didn't say anything. This is all because Zishan is giving me face. Once I go back, this little brother of mine will become a coward. Death Mage was sitting beside him. Sun Fong was not present today. After eating his wife's grilled chicken wings, Yi Hong sighed softly. Uncle Wei, why did you ask us to take turns to guard this place? Could it be that someone else is coming? Zishan took out a tissue and passed it to her husband. Yi Hong smiled as he took the tissue and wiped his lips. Zishan said, Uncle Wei might have also received his honor's order to prevent anyone from launching a sneak attack on us. Then, if someone is really going to launch a sneak attack on us, then his honor's prophecy is truly incredible. LV Liang sighed with emotion, and within his mind, his honor's tall and sturdy figure appeared, and a blazing heat could be seen emitting out from his gaze. Death Mage let out a cold laugh. His honor is a supreme overlord. How can we compare with his intelligence? There's nothing wrong with what Master Spellcaster said. Yi Hong said with a grin. The reason why his honor is able to lead such a powerful team is all because of his own capabilities. Zishan laughed. All of you are just a bunch of bootlickers. For example, I am his honor's brainless fan. His honor is so handsome. Facing his wife's limitless worship of his honor, Yi Hong asked curiously, then, is his honor more handsome, or am I, your husband, more handsome? Zishan poked onto her husband's forehead unhappily. Aren't you talking nonsense? It's definitely because his honor is handsome. Yi Hong felt as though a sharp sword had stabbed into her chest. It was so painful. LV Liang laughed out loud. What you are doing is called masochism. I would never ask this kind of question, and yet, you are actually competing with his honor in terms of handsomeness. Little brother, you sure have guts. Yi Hong also discovered that she had misspoken. I actually became so arrogant that I want to compare my looks with his honor. I'm ashamed. He silently prayed for his honor to spare his life. LV Liang took a look at the time. It was almost midnight. It's time to change shifts. That's right, it has been a long time since I last fought. If someone really comes, then hurry up and come. Zishan's hands were clearly a bit itchy. It was no longer interesting for her to abuse her husband at home every single day. Yi Hong said in a low voice, honey, haven't you hit me enough at night? Zishan said casually, if you are able to make my stomach become big, do you think that I would need to hit you? This isn't my fault. Yi Hong said embarrassedly. Speaking of which, it has already been a few months, but Zishan is still not pregnant yet. Could it be that it is that difficult for a deity to get pregnant? His honor's wives are already pregnant with their second child, and I didn't even get to see a single fart. Speaking of children, Zishan became angry. If it's not your fault, then whose fault is it? You aren't even willing to work overtime. I'm just worried about you. What worried about me? From what I see, you just don't want to have children. When did I? Look. You aren't even irritated anymore. The husband and wife immediately started scolding each other. Zishan was the main attacker, while Yi Hong was the one who explained. Death Mage and LV Liang turned around and shook their heads helplessly. Death Mage thought to himself, fortunately, I am a skeleton, and I can't shoot anything at all. Meanwhile, LV Liang thought to himself, the Blood Race sisters didn't even mention about having children at all. If they are pregnant, then just raise them. If they are not pregnant, then it doesn't matter either. Right at this moment, 4 figures appeared at the side. To be more precise, there were only 3 figures, and one of them was a husky, sister-in-law. Greetings. The 4 people stood up and greeted respectfully. The 3 people who came were Lai Gu's 3 wives, Yi, Wen Xia, Bai Xiaozhen, and of course, there was also that Yun Lang who stuck out his tongue. Lai Gu's identity in the team belonged to his honor's direct subordinate, and his status was outstanding. Thus, his wives' status naturally rose as well. However, Yi, Wen Xia, and Bai Xiaozhen were still very amiable. They did not become arrogant because of their status, because they understood that if it wasn't for Lai Gu, it would be impossible for them to be standing here and serve the Supreme Overlord. This time, they took the initiative to participate in the mission, not for anything else, but because they wanted to bring honor to their husband and let his honor praise them. As a wife, this was something that was necessary. That's why, these 3 women are all smart women. If not, how would they be able to obtain Lai Gu's affection? Lai Gu was very picky. In the past, he would often change his female dragons, and now, it has already been a year, and it was still the same 3. From the looks of it, these 3 women had already charmed Lai Gu. You all quickly go back and rest, leave this place to us. Yi laughed lightly. In actuality, things like staying up all night can be handed over to other people, it's just that they took the initiative to request it. Sister-in-law, thank you for your hard work. LV Liang cupped her hands and said with a smile. After all, after acknowledging Lai Gu as his big brother, his hairstyle was split in the middle, and he looked very handsome. However, just as everyone was about to change shifts, an enormous spiritual pressure appeared in the sky. The 7 people and the husky looked up at the sky, and excitement could be seen in their eyes. They really came. His honor is so powerful. He was even able to guess this. The 4 people who came were naturally Du Zui, Jiu Ling, Chu Ying, and Shi Xiaotian. The 4 people stared at the bonfire, and of course, the people beside the bonfire also had puzzled gazes. Why would these people appear here? Shi Xiaotian asked curiously. However, he wasn't afraid, he was simply curious. Jiu Ling laughed lightly, there's even a dog, how interesting. There's also a skeleton, humph. Du Zui said coldly. Chu Ying asked puzzledly, is that the black gown? So what if it's the black gown? They are nothing more than a group of women. Du Zui said indifferently. He seemed very calm and didn't panic in the slightest. The 4 people in the sky were very calm and collected. The 7 people below were no longer calm and collected. Sister-in-law, look, it isn't time to change shifts yet, how about you all sit down and rest? Zi Shan said hurriedly. It wasn't easy for people to come and cause trouble for us, so how about we let them go? Not only are we able to fight, we will also be able to obtain his honor's praise. This is simply killing 2 birds with 1 stone. With a light smile on her face, Wen Xia said unhurriedly, Zi Shan, since you called us sister-in-law, you should listen to sister-in-law and go back and rest properly. You can just leave the matters here to sister-in-law. So incisive, even Yun Lang who was at the side nodded his head vigorously. No matter what, I came out from Voidless, and before I even had the chance to show off my might, I was completely oppressed by Big Sister. Now that the opportunity is here, how can I let it go? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.